I'm Travis Weaver, and you're listening to the Good People Project. Let's do it.
All right.
Negative stories get headlines, but there are a ton of good and decent people stepping up to serve an elected office. The Good People Project tells the unsung story of those who wake up every day to do good and selfless work for the American people. With new episodes out every Monday, please share this episode with friends and family to help spread our positive message. Today's guest is a freshman legislator in the Illinois House of Representatives who has hit the ground running full speed. His experience as a businessman and restaurant owner has served the General Assembly. However, given that he represents the capital city of Springfield, and has been a staple in the community for decades, he also brings a unique type of experience in knowing the history of the issues, how certain pieces of legislation came together, and who the major players are. So, without any further ado, the wise and talented Mike Coffey.
Well, thank you for the great introduction, Travis. It's great to be here.
Mike, how's life, man?
That's good. Well? It's going good. Welcome back to Saputo's. How has it been here in the summertime instead of,
Well, I was going to say, let's not bury the lead. So we're sitting here in your family restaurant. We're
in
Saputo's. And before I ever knew you, so my cousin's a restaurant guy in Peoria. He owns a restaurant called Weaver's. And the summer I was campaigning, so summer 2022, I didn't meet you until 23. He's like, hey, man, I just drove through Springfield and I got food from the best Italian restaurant in the country. It's called Saputo's. And then now here, flash forward, I'm with you. So unsolicited feedback from a fan.
All right. Well, great. That's great. No, we've got a lot of customers. That's one of the advantages that I had coming into this is that unlike a lot of freshman legislators that get in and they come to Springfield, and so it's the first time they meet people from across the state, I have actually had a social engagement with many of the legislators for many, many years. So they're friends. And so I think it does help me. The restaurant is a big advantage for me. There's no question.
Yeah, I think no doubt. I mean, just the fact that, there's 118 members in the House, all 118 members know of this place or have probably eaten at this place.
Right.
And so when you're working on a bill, you're not necessarily talking to people across the aisle as an R or a D. You're talking to them as somebody who's known them probably often for years.
Right. And, you get the luxury of, because you're in a social environment, a lot of legislators come in here for dinner on both sides of the aisle and have for years. So you get to kind of discuss the issues, not at the House and, more in a more relaxed atmosphere. And I think you can get more done and more accomplished, or at least that's my hope anyway.
And it was before my day, but as I understand, the former speaker used to kind of hang out here.
Yeah.
This was spot.
You know what? The former speaker hung out here. Most of the governors have. JB hasn't been. And he came to our 75th anniversary party, but I haven't seen him since he's been governor, so he hasn't come in. Maybe that's because I'm a legislator. I don't know. But this is a very unique place. I'll tell you what, at many times, you'd have the Speaker of the House, you'd have the governor in one corner, you'd have the minority leader in one. All four leaders would be in the restaurant at the same time in four different corners. So it's very unique, and it makes for a fun atmosphere. People come in to see who's here a lot of times and all that. So it's exciting.
In the extremely slim chance that somebody on the Pritzker team hears this message, just know R's are welcome, D's are welcome.
Oh, that's right.
We'll serve you food.
Yeah,
nobody's spitting in it. We'd love to give you some ravioli.
That's right. Yeah. No, I need them to carry out for staff. All through the weeks. Yeah.
Give a positive Yelp review.
And they've got way more members than us. So I'd rather feed the Democrats than the Republicans and make more money. that's for sure. So that's what it's all about. Dollars and cents down here.
So what's the history? So this was your father's or grandfather's?
No, my grandfather. My great-grandparents worked here, but my grandfather and his twin brother always owned it. It was originally called Saputo's Twins Corner.
Okay.
Started in 1948. It was more like a bar, and they'd have sandwiches. And then I think in 1952, it kind of became a full-fledged restaurant. So my great-grandmother was in the kitchen, and my great-grandfather was the bartender. And then my grandfather and his brother, ran everything, did it along with their wives. Their wives worked in the kitchen. The two twins worked out. They were kind of the social ones and kind of promoted the business and all that. And so I think 1980, my grandfather's twin brother got out, and he moved to Florida. And so my grandfather was kind of stuck because they had a great deal for many, many years. They'd work a month on, a month off, a week on, a week off, and they'd go through all that stuff. So they did quite well and had a nice lifestyle on top of it, And they back when they worked here, it was all family members. So, their sisters were the servers and the waitresses. So, it was now we're down pretty much, we're going to be down to one family member unless some of my kids come back into the business. So right now it's my mom and dad and me and my wife and my kids, but I'm, the last one to really work in there. So we'll have to see.
And have the recipes stuck around? Or
the recipes to this day, the only two people that make anything here are my mother or me. So we're the only two that do it. So so we make it in large quantities, and then they put it together in the kitchen. But the sauce, the salad dressing, the meatballs, the sausage, the breading, and all that are all homemade by my mother or myself.
And I always think of the toasted ravioli as kind of being the thing, but what are your biggest movers?
Oh, well, the lasagna here, it's not a traditional lasagna, not layered and all that, but it's very good. Our red sauce is very good. Our big thing is our salad dressing is very unique. Most salad dressings are sweet. This is not. It's very popular. We ship it out to people. People buy it, take it home. And then we've got the hand-breaded steak, which is very popular. A lot of people get the breaded steak, the breaded halibut. It's our Italian breading that we put on it and bake it and stuff like that. So
it's got to be hard coming from the restaurant business into state government, because in the restaurant business, your margins are razor thin. You're watching costs all over the place. There's no extra costs around. You're watching your staff, you're watching your rent, you're watching your input costs, and then now you come to the state house.
And government's doing such a bad job. It's even tougher now than it's ever been before. Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, it's really concerning because here, restaurants are closing every day. So, with the rising cost of food and the rising cost of employees and all that, I mean, it's devastating. But the cost of food for restaurants is everybody goes to the grocery store, and that's the biggest issue. I don't know, when you're walking and talking, that is really the biggest issue. People talk about inflation, and they talk about how much it costs to go to the grocery store. That's what they talk about. Well, it's the same thing for me. So I understand when you're saying what it's like to go to the grocery store. I'm going to the grocery store every single day because I'm buying these products. And, it's concerning. I know exactly how they feel because it's scary because you just don't know, especially in the restaurant. I can't change my prices every day. I've got the set menu, and then as the prices come in, we hope through the year it kind of, prices go up and down, and it levels out at a certain point. But the last few years, it keeps going up and up and up, and it's getting very difficult. So
What are some of the prices that have hit you the hardest? Is it
proteins? Proteins have gone up. They've kind of stabilized a little bit, but when it first started, it was really a lot of proteins and all that. But everything's up 25%, 30%. And then you go into your insurance costs, and you go into everything else. I mean, it's you can't really pass it on to the consumer. So eventually you do, but you cannot respond quick enough to do it. And we're kind of the only, we're college educated. I went to the University of Illinois. All my family are college educated. We're in the restaurant business. It's a little bit unusual for people that work it every single day. We're hands-on, work in the restaurant. And so I worry a lot of times people, most people when they get in the restaurant business, I think it's got one of the highest failure rates in the country. They see that money coming in, and it takes them a little while to figure out, oh, you know what, I'm not making as much money. And if you don't keep up with it, you'll go out of business really quick. So we've been doing it a long time, so we know 1948 is pretty good records. We're the oldest restaurant in the city of Springfield with the same family owners in the same place. So
I want to say it's like 90% of new restaurants don't make it longer than 12 months. Does that sound?
Yeah, it's about something like that.
I mean, that's just wild.
Yeah, it is. But there's just things that you just don't really realize. Yeah. It's just it's difficult. It's a difficult business. So
yeah.
And if I hadn't been born into it, I probably would have never gone into it. It wasn't something like I said, I'd like to own restaurants, but my family's in it. We've done pretty well at it. So,
but I think probably folks think I go to that place, my meal is $150. Mm-hmm. And if I made it at home, it'd be so much cheaper. Mm-hmm. So they must have all this profit margin. Yeah. But what they're not thinking is you got your insurance, you got your labor, you got all the stuff. You got
you got the property taxes.
We've
got all this. I mean, it all adds up. So if you think you're individually taxed a lot, if you've got a business, you're really taxed. And so that's one of the advantages of me. I think being the state legislator from here, I know the problems when I'm talking to the people and they're expressing their problems. I know exactly how they feel because I have the same circumstance. I think we were just talking about a little bit ago. That's one of the advantage I think a lot of the Republicans have because I think most all the Republicans have jobs outside of being a state legislator. And we were talking about, I think that's what you need to have because that way what people are struggling with every single day. And I think it helps you be a better legislator.
Yeah, I always say it keeps you with one foot on the ground because this political job that we do, isn't, a real job.
Well, it's
And
not
this-
it's not reality.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah,
not reality.
exactly.
Everybody, because I get a kick out of people say, well, how do you like it, Mike? I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm 54 years old and I'm still low man on the totem pole here. I still answer to my mom, my dad, and every relative I've got are still telling me what to do. I said, it's the first place I've ever gone where I've got somebody that takes my picture. I got somebody that writes stuff for Facebook. I got a secretary. I've got a chief of staff. I said, that's not reality.
Yeah.
So if you think that, you're going into it, and I'm concerned about it. I mean, you're a very young legislator, but there's a lot of young ones on the other side of the aisle. You are not part of this, but some of them, I don't think they really know. And so if you're out there and have never had another job, and this is, it's not reality. You don't know. There's so much to life and so much of having employees and going through stuff that you see different aspects of it. So I think it's very important to work.
And it was never intended to be a career.
No.
And I think if it's your only job, then it's your career.
Correct.
And which puts you in a really bad position when somebody comes to you and says, I need you to vote yes on this.
Yeah.
If you don't, we're going to challenge you and you're going to lose your seat.
Right.
If somebody said that to me, geez, I took a 50% pay cut from CAT to do this. If I lost my seat, I'll go back and get a corporate job and make more money. I love what I'm doing. I feel fulfilled by what I'm doing, but it's not to the point where I'm going to compromise my values to keep the seat. Whereas, man, if this was my paycheck, if it was my livelihood, that's just not, I think, a healthy place to be negotiating your vote from.
I 100% agree with you, and I have the same sentiment. I really like having the job, but if I don't have the job, I'm not going to cry and not know what to do and all that stuff. I enjoy it. I think that I bring value to the job. I try and work very hard at it, but I've got outside income, so that makes you
Sure.
more independent than relying on lobbying and special interests to kind of dictate what you do. Because if you don't have that, then it does become harder, just like you're saying. So,
one thing I think that we do a good job in the General Assembly, at least the way that our founding fathers structured this country, is that I think we do a good job of having some diversity and experiences. We've got firemen, policemen, lawyers, doctors, business people. But I think you might be the only restaurant person. Is that right? Do you know if there's anybody else that's got restaurants?
Yeah, I think
None that
it
come
wasn't
to
Sam
mind.
Penny-Otovich in a long time ago, and he had
Okay.
restaurants, But yeah, I might be. Yeah.
Do you think, are there certain issues where it'll come up that impacts restaurant owners that you
Well,
feel like
I
you
mean,
could
the
really
last
speak with
one was
authority on?
the tip credit that came where they wanted to get rid of the tip credit for everyone, and I know firsthand that the employees didn't want it. They were having outside interests from other states come in and lobbying, saying, "Oh, we're doing it for the staff. We're doing it for the staff." Well, everybody that worked here said, "You're not going to do that, are you, Mike?" They're not going to do that. And so just right there, that issue. I know what servers make. The Democratic Party or parts of I shouldn't say the Democratic Party because there were a lot of Democrats that weren't for it. But the ones that were for it kept saying, "Oh, they make it seem as if, well, they're getting less than sub-minimum wage." No, they're getting $30, $40, $50, $60 an hour. And they're just focusing on that one thing. That's the reality of it. No one makes minimum wage that's serving. If you're serving and you are working someplace where you're making minimum wage, you're serving at the wrong place. Quit and call me because I need servers. So yeah. So I mean, just that issue, and just when it comes to taxes and just like I said, the cost of living.
Yeah.
It affects me. So. Gas prices go up, it affects me. Food prices go up, it affects me. Every single facet of our economy affects the restaurant business, and so utility rates go up. It affects me. We burn through a lot of electricity, so the cheaper it is, the better it is. And all of that stuff affects small businesses. And I think people forget. They think when they think Republicans, they think big businesses. No, Republicans are really small business people, and they go to work every day, that work their own stores, and they're the ones that are working the counters and all that. My mom's 77 years old, my dad's 77 years old. They'll be working the door right tonight. And so I think that people forget that small business people work very, very hard, and they pay a big portion of our taxes in this country, and we need to listen to them. We got to do everything we can not to put people out of business, not to put small business out, because that is the American dream. The American dream is not all these big businesses and a lot of employees. No, the American dream is where everybody has their piece of the pie and they're working for their family and all that. And as politicians, as elected officials, we need to do that. So.
Yeah. So, speaking of small businesses, so you have the family business here, Saputo's,
Yeah.
but you also have your own Papa Frank's that you started.
Well,
so,
yeah,
how
we-
did you make that decision?
Well, we just, you know what? As everybody starts to move further and further west, we kind of know. You know, it's really funny when you're here all the time. So let's say Travis Weaver comes in every Tuesday and Wednesday night, and for years you come in, and it's so funny how many people in this town. They come in on the same day. They sit at the same table and eat the same thing once a week. You can't believe it. But, you know, you'd start to say, you know, I'd go to the grocery store and I'd see Travis Weaver, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, you know what? He hasn't been in the restaurant. What happened? Well, people are moving further and further west. So just to kind of give us a presence and all that to the people out west, keep old customers, get new customers, you know, to expand the brand and all that. You know, we decided to do that. Just, you know, and hopefully, and it's been, you know, it's going to be 10 years here. In June. So,
and is that one? That one's all yours, right? You started that on your own.
Yeah. Well, yes, but we do here. I'm an only child. You
Yeah.
know, my brother died when I was in high school, so we do everything as a family. So the inner workings are different, but you know, it's all the same, really.
Well,
it all goes to three people, my three children. So every dime we make seems to go to them. So
I appreciate the generations that it's made it. You know, we had a family business, restaurants. We were in the KFC business, and we had our fair share of awkward Christmases. You know, you're at dinner talking about chicken prices on Christmas Eve, and you know, we went through, I think, some challenging years where, you know, with my dad and his siblings, it just was challenging. There was 5 of them to all work together, and so whenever I meet somebody that's in third, fourth, fifth generation, you know, on the outside, I think it looks like all sunshine and rainbows. Wow, this is Mayberry family business, but it's got a lot of challenges.
Well, it has a lot of challenges, but I will tell you, I got tremendous parents, and you know, my kids are all here. We're very, very close. Now, I will tell you that we do have explosive dinners, and we do it. We do it almost every night. That's the crazy part. We all get together, we argue, and somebody will say something about the business, and the other one will say that, or all you have to do is I make it better than my mom, and that'll get you in trouble. She may not talk to me for a week if I said that, but that's not true. Everything my mom makes is far better. But you know, and that is the difficult part, because it never leaves you. That's all we do talk about. It kind of consumes us with talking about it, and it can be annoying. But you know what? On the other hand, I've got 3 children. My 2 oldest ones have been gone. One lived in Atlanta, one lived in Nashville. They've all moved back home. We're all very close. We just had dinner last night at my mom's house. Everybody came over. Now I just had my first grandchild, Henry. And
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he's 8 months old. He was 8 months old yesterday. My daughter, who had him, is having another baby here, another boy. And then my son, who's married, he's having a boy too, just a month apart. So we're going to have 3 boys under a year here real quick, you know, so it's going to be very exciting. And we all get together, and the kids are very close to my parents and my wife and everybody. We all get together. So we lived, you know, this is how crazy we are, you know. When the kids were little, I lived here, and my parents lived next door, and my wife's parents lived 2 doors down. So, you know, we're all very close, and so that's what we like about Springfield. That's one of the great things about Springfield, to be honest with you. It is a very small town. You know, some people might think it's a big town, 100 and some thousand, but it's really a small town of a lot of the same families. And there's been a lot of families here that have all had family businesses, and you grow up together. I was just, you know, with some people that their grandfather and my grandfather were friends for generations. My daughter, her best friend is a friend of mine. You know, he was in her parents were in my wedding, and then their parents were in my grandparents' wedding. They were friends with my grandparents. So we've got deep roots in the community, a lot of deep friendships and all that. And so that's the nice part about Springfield. It's the nice part about the restaurant business, really, because you get together with people in a social atmosphere. That is the best part of the restaurant business.
So you have kind of an interesting role to play where you're the representative of the capital city. And there's some things that are different for you. Like your office is on the Capitol grounds. And I'm sure a lot of your constituents are employees of the government or lobbyists. I mean, you probably have the most in-tune constituency of all of us.
Yes. I would say, I will venture to say that I've actually got the best district of anybody in the state, to be quite honest with you. It's a very compact district. It's primarily Sangamon County. I think 85% of my district is Sangamon County. I've got a little bit of Christian, a little bit of Macon. But, you know, it's very a politically educated group. And I think they know how government works, and so they're more receptive to, you know, the ebbs and flows of how things go. And so, I'm very fortunate to represent the 95th district.
Yeah, I always say it's my job to make the right vote, not the popular vote.
Right.
And a lot of times, what that means is that I got to make my vote, and then I got to go back to my constituents and explain or educate as to why I felt like that was the right vote to make.
Right.
Whereas for you, you probably have people that help you that are at playing golf or at dinner, and somebody says, "Why the heck did Coffey make that boneheaded vote?"
Yeah,
and there's so many educated people around.
Yeah, but
they,
you know what? I will tell you what. I am overwhelmed by how excited, because I'll be the first to tell you, Travis, I'm not all sunshine and rainbows. I'm not your typical politician. Most of the politicians you get elected, they know everybody's name and they like to hug and all that. And I'm very serious, and I'm very emotional. I got a hot temper and all that. But I think what people like about me is, one, I'm kind of, in some ways, I'm kind of insulted because, they call my office. I mean, I'm on. I'm like, all right, I'll call that. I'll call them. And I've got an advantage in that part because living in Springfield. So when you've got a problem with an agency or something, you're calling somebody in Springfield that I probably know because they go to school with one of my kids or something like that. So I've got a built-in advantage from that standpoint as well. But people are nice. I can't believe how excited people are. What they say is, we're glad somebody that runs their own business is in government. And I get that all the time. And I will say, I do a lot of mailers and a lot of the constituent outreach, and I can tell you that people really appreciate it. They say that, you know what, we're so excited. We're finally getting information from our government, not solicitations from our government. And now we'll see. I've got to run in November. I'd lose. They didn't like it that much. But I think that, we'll be victorious. And I think part of it is going to be due to this constituent outreach that we've done. And I'll be honest with you, I got to give, credit for that to our leader Tony McCombie, because she's put together this thing, and I've gone by the playbook, and I think it's been very successful. And I think if you're doing a good job, the 2 years before you get to an election, people appreciate it. They know who's doing the work, and they know that you care about it. You're responding to the calls, and I think then when it comes to election time, you get rewarded for it.
So. It's also interesting that for you, it is more like a day job in the sense that you go home every night, and that probably makes you better too, just that you're grounded and your family, your wife, you're going home, you're resetting, as opposed to I don't stay down here. I go back to Peoria most nights, but I think if I was away from home for a week, by the time I got to Friday, you're maybe a little disoriented. You've had lobbyists in your ear all week telling you one thing, and I bet that helps you.
Right, it does. So when because a lot of times, people we get done with session and everybody's going out. They're going out to dinner with lobbyists, and they're going out with other politicians. I usually come down here, see everybody, but I end up eating dinner with my wife and my parents is normally what I end up doing. So, I think it is. Like I said, it is a big benefit. This district, being the representative from this district, is very, very nice. If anybody else could have it, they'd want it. They wouldn't want to give it back. So I'm very lucky. There's no question about it.
And you mentioned you got a race coming up this fall.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
I feel pretty good. I feel good about it, and primarily for what I was telling you. I think this constituent outreach, people really appreciate it, and I think I know better than my opponent, the core values of the area. Born and raised here. Every family member of mine is here. My daughter's married to a family that their family's been here. So we're in tune. It's really a local. Are you from here? Have you been here? And all that. And I think people appreciate that. I think they like to know. Well, we know Mike can be a little surly sometimes, but we know he'll do the right thing. We know that he has the conservative values of Central Illinois, and I think that'll pay off.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of people will take a little surly, to use your words, because I feel like people always know where they stand with you.
Right,
You're
that's
a straight
true.
shooter.
Yeah, that's true. And I do. I tell the truth. And if I'm going to vote against somebody, I tell them I'm going to vote against them. And and I can tell them why. And if somebody, I like, in today's day and age, it's very hard to have political conversations because people get mad.
Yeah.
I very much enjoy having political conversations, and I prefer to have them with people that I disagree with, because I sit, when we sit in that chamber and you look across and all the people over, they're all nice, right?
Yeah.
We know them all. Yeah, I mean, you're socialized with more of them than I probably do on the House floor because them. They're all nice people, but you wonder, how can they vote that way? I mean, you think, so it helps to try and figure out, is my thinking correct or is it wrong? Maybe we're wrong. We're not, though, Travis. We're right. We got to convince them, though.
I feel pretty good about it. I mean, and you look at the people that leave the state. You don't need to ask them why, because they tell you why.
Yeah.
We got too high taxes. We're spending way too much time teaching kids in our schools things that aren't going to serve them throughout their life. We don't have a friendly business environment. One stat that I use all the time, over the last 10 years, Illinois has gone from the third cheapest to the 37th cheapest power in the entire country. Yeah. And that's huge for two reasons. First of all, your poor, low and middle income people, you just doubled their energy bills. And how the heck are they supposed to survive? But what's even worse is that even though we had higher property taxes and an unfriendly business environment, this is still a place where manufacturers wanted to locate because they could get cheap power.
Right.
You take cheap power off the table, we still got rail, we still got maybe a more trained workforce, but that was a huge advantage that we lost, and it's all because of poor decision making, because the governor wanted to say that we don't use coal power in Illinois anymore. So what do? We import coal power from Kentucky and Missouri. I mean, we're working on this transmission line, and so now we're not the ones burning the coal, but we're still burning coal. We're just paying double for it.
It's and I really think that is the biggest thing that people aren't talking about, because we're on the MISO grid down here. I don't know if you're on MISO or not.
Yep.
Same. Well, we're going to have rolling blackouts and brownouts at some point. That's what they all predict. That's not a Republican deal. That's just what the experts say.
I think Ameren put that out late last summer.
And all these reports. And so how do you explain this? Listen, my son's a big hunter and fisherman. He's going on these trips. They worry about the environment more than anybody. But how do you explain to people, you're going to pay triple for the same power? Does that make any sense? We're going to still get coal power. We're just going to get it from Missouri. So now all the politicians in Illinois can say, oh my God, we're green and all. Well, you're not green. CO2 emissions are up all over the world. Yeah. So we must be doing something wrong. So if the goal was to get rid of CO2 emissions and it's going up, then what are we doing? And now this right here in Springfield, City Water, Light and Power, that's the cleanest plant in the country. Comes out, but now we're going to shut it down. Does that make any sense? Springfield always had cheap power, and now it's going up and up and up and up. And then the transmission lines, you got to have double and triple the transmission lines you had before, which makes it more work. And these windmills going up and down 55 every time I look at them that aren't blowing. And that's the stuff that people don't know. And I don't know how power is so complex, and how you take it to the general public and explain it to them. You got a 100 megawatt coal-fired power plant. It produces about 95 megawatts all the time. You go to, what is it, solar? I think it produces about 40 megawatts, 35 megawatts. And then you get to wind, it's 25 megawatts. So you have to have 5 times as many plants and windmills and all that stuff. And it just doesn't make any sense. I want to save the environment, save the world too, but are we really doing that? Or is this are we being sold a bill of goods? Yeah. And are we having the American taxpayers and the people of Illinois pay triple to benefit people overseas? And that's what I believe is happening, but
Well, I think that's why President Trump, I think, was so smart to pull out of the Paris deal, because here we are footing the bill for all this, jacking up our energy costs on our manufacturers and our low-income people. And meanwhile, China's just going gangbusters. So is India. And so we're spending all this time. And actually, I want to say since 2000, the U.S. has slowly declined on our annual CO2 emissions. And they're just going through the roof. Right. And so, it's an incentive game. And if we can't get everybody to come together and be part of this, why are we handcuffing ourselves here in Illinois? Right. And I think it really highlights the fracturing coalition that they have on the left that has historically been minorities and lower income people, and is now really being more infiltrated by this suburban white, master's degree woke type person. And they're the ones pushing the DEI in the classroom. They're the ones pushing the green agenda. And then you come back to these low income people that have kind of been the bread and butter of the party, and they're like, why are you teaching my third grader how to masturbate? I want them to learn how to do math so that they can get a job. Or why are you doubling my energy bills? I used to have $100 left at the end of the month to go have a nice Italian dinner at Saputo's, and now that's my power bill. And so I think that this coalition that they have is just so fragile, and I think that's why, I'm going to butcher these numbers, but I think in 2020, President Trump got like 12% of the African-American vote, and I think this time he's about going to double that to 24%. And it's not like he's close to the majority, but that's a big seismic shift in where we're seeing party politics. And I think it's because they're kind of abandoning the people that they always said that they cared about.
Well, if you're African American and you voted for the Democratic Party 95% of everybody votes for the Democratic Party, and you don't like your situation, maybe you're voting for the wrong party. And I'll tell you what, when you get onto Trump, we need to get Donald Trump to go on national TV, and he needs to turn to the camera, and he needs to talk to women out there and people that are moderates and independents and say, this is why you're voting for me. You're not voting for Donald Trump. You're voting for your children. You're voting for, cheaper gas, a safer world, and all of that. And he's got to go. If you want your groceries to come down, you want to be able to afford bacon, you want to be able to take your kids out to dinner, you want to be able to go on a vacation, you want to be able to send them to college. That's why you're voting for Donald. You're not voting for Donald Trump. You're voting for your kids, and you're voting for the future, because he will be the best for the future of the country. Now, does he say stuff he shouldn't say? Absolutely. You can't, we can't sit here and defend the stuff that he says and all that, but that isn't what we're doing. We're not, that's where we've got to get the American people and the people of Illinois. Politics shouldn't be a popularity contest. It should be who's going to do the best job. So if you got the nicest guy over here or the nicest lady over here that remembers your name and always gives you a hug and all that, and I know some of them in there that are just like that, but they're dumber than a box of rocks and don't know what they're doing, then maybe we're voting for the wrong people. And I don't know how as Republicans we get that message across, because like I've told people before, I think people think Republicans are always doom and gloom and we come across as negative. And I don't think we're negative. I just think we're worried and we're concerned, and maybe we don't present it in the right manner. That might be it. Like when we're talking about the president, joy. We want to bring joy to you. What kind of joy are you going to bring? You're meeting with Vladimir Putin, President Xi. You're going to bring joy into the room? I don't. We need to bring results into the room and figure out who's going to do that. And hopefully we can do it here in Illinois, and we can do it nationally too. But
I like to talk to my mom about politics because I'm in the General Assembly. My dad was in the state Senate. Mm-hmm. We really live in it,
right?
And whereas my mom is an educated voter, but it's not like what she does all day, every day. And so I think she just has more of a take that somebody on the street would have. Mm-hmm. And after the DNC, she said, I just love this. She said, it just seems to me like the Democrats are more about Hollywood and the Republicans are more about math. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's your point about messaging is it's really a cold sale. I mean, we're not selling people on good vibes and joy. Right. We're selling people on affordable gas and a prosperous future. And look, Kamala, I can't put joy in my gas tank. I can't buy groceries with vibes. I appreciate that that's what your campaign's about. But at the end of the day, you got to have tangible policies. And actually, you go to her website, she has not one policy position on all of her website because she can't stand behind any of them because they know that they all fold under pressure.
Right. I mean, if just like when we're talking about the basic parts of energy, when you go through it, what's your defense? Explain it to me. Explain to me why I should believe in this when I'm paying triple and we're still using coal-powered power, but we're not going to use it in Illinois. It doesn't make any sense. So now it's a crazy world. And I'm very concerned, coming up in November. So let's hope we pick up seats, because we need, more balance. We definitely need more balance in the state of Illinois. And we've got to, I think it makes it for better governing all across the board. Even if we had the supermajority, which I'd really like, that'd be a lot more fun. But we don't. So, but parity is really what we need.
I agree. It should be hard to pass a bill. Yeah. I mean, you're changing the law. It should be really challenging to do that. Mm-hmm. And let's say we're in the majority. We get 65 members. We get all the votes, but you still are at a point where you got to go to the other side and allow them to critique you. And one thing I always say about the other side is, if you come with a good idea or fair critique, it's to their advantage to want to listen to you because they want to pass a good bill. Right. They don't want to pass a bill that we're going to then spend all summer saying how stupid it was. Right. And if they can change the language. Now, there's sometimes when we're just universes apart and there's not going to be any compromise. But I agree that when you have balance, that really forces you to push, and when you push on things, you end up with better legislation.
Well, and then you grew up, with your dad and being in politics and how, the system works in there. I really didn't know that, so I got in there. So when you find out that, they sub people out of committees if you're not going to get the votes.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a common everyday practice.
That was the minimum wage tip vote.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I mean, it's a 21-member committee, and
Right.
they had like none of the original.
They took
members.
7 people out to force the vote so that it passed, and then they didn't
Yeah.
call it. Thank goodness. But
Yeah.
I had no idea that's just. Then they can't pass the budget, and so then they change the rules. I mean, come on, that's
Yeah.
every rep in a 2-year period should get one bill that has to get called on the House floor for an up and down vote. If you did that, you could change Illinois forever because there's too much centralized power in our government. If you're not the leader of the Senate or the leader of the House, they've got all the power along with the governor. The rank and file don't get the opportunity to really represent their people or put a good idea forward. Because if you've got great bills, I've got great bills, if we could get them on the floor for a vote, they'd pass because nobody's going to want to vote against them because they're very common sense, reasoned bills that people would want. But we can't get them called, and so that would be the biggest change. You wouldn't have to worry about money, any of that stuff in politics. Every rep in a 2-year period got one bill, their signature bill in that 2 year. I'd like it to be 5 in a 2-year period, but just one bill.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going to stake your election on and see if people vote for it. It would change government forever for the better, and that's all you would have to do.
There's an interesting story that you probably already know, but I'll let him remain nameless. But one of our colleagues stole away a Democrat seat, and so they're really putting all of his bills in a lock. They won't let him call anything. And so last year, 23, he had a bill that had 65 sponsors on it, more sponsors than it takes to pass the bill.
Right.
And so Leader McCombie is in a meeting with the speaker and says, this representative has this bill. He's got so many sponsors. Won't you just call it? It'll pass. He goes, how do you know it'll pass if I call it? She says, well, he's got a lot of sponsors. She goes, how many sponsors does he have? She says, 65. And then they still didn't call it.
They don't call it.
And it's just such an example that it's a great bill. It's such a great bill that more than half of the members not only want to vote yes, want to be associated with it as a sponsor, and they don't call it because they're playing politics.
Yeah, and that's wrong. And that's wrong. And that's why I said just one bill would change the state forever. So.
We mentioned this before, that the main experience that you bring is just being a restaurant person and a business guy. Any other issues that you're passionate about that are really why you're there, that you feel like are what you
Well,
want to work
I mean,
on?
the big, for me, I really didn't, I had no plans to take this seat. No plans. Tim Butler was here, did a great job. He had just run. I think he, won by 30 points. Everybody likes him. And then he decided, I think he got tired of being in the super minority, and he decided to retire and do something else. And so it came up, and I had messed around with it, but I work a lot. I work a lot of hours. I've got, 3 kids, now I'm going to have grandkids. But it came up. My wife's like, just put in, you always wanted to do it. I'm like, no, I didn't get it last time. And, I can be a little, I didn't get it, But because I'm on the Bank of Springfield, I've been chairman of the Bank of Springfield board and stuff. I'm still doing that. But and I put in for it. And one of the reasons I put in for it, and I think that is you've been coming down here for years with your family. You can see some deterioration here in Springfield, Illinois, and in Central Illinois. And so I just want to have somebody in there that's really going to fight for making this town better, making the 95th district better in Central Illinois. And that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about when I'm talking to other legislators, like, hey, you come down here, because they'll come and they'll complain about, hotel rooms or something like that. I'm like, all right, we need your help. That you got to make sure, this is your home too. It's just that you might live in Peoria or wherever, and then you come to Springfield, but Springfield's your home too. You spend a lot of time here. And, given the fact that Abraham Lincoln is from here, we need to make sure the money's invested in this area to make it look good in the way that it should,
So, December of 22 or January 23, you were appointed. Is that right?
Yeah,
somewhere in there.
Well, yeah,
I
was sworn in. Well, the Sangamon, because it's a 3-county. Well, the 3-county chairman, get together, and then you go through an interview process. I think there was 14 or 15 that put in for it.
Oh, wow.
It's weighted with Sangamon County. So basically, if the Sangamon County chairman said you get it, no. But I talked to all 3, got the support of all 3 county chairmen, and then then I was appointed. So I was actually sworn in with the class. But the district had changed, so Butler was actually representing a different district than
Right.
the 95th district, so I couldn't get appointed before. They appointed somebody else for that.
Well, you're part of the reason why I don't have license plate number 118. I was supposed to because I was a freshman, and W is the last letter. And then, well, maybe I guess it's not you because
No,
you were
it's not
appointed.
me.
I bet it was.
Yeah, I'm
Dirk-
101.
Durkin and
I'm way
Yossi.
out, yeah.
Yeah. So I was supposed to be the 118, which
Yeah.
I was like, love it. Started at the bottom, very lowest license plate, and then Durkin and gosh, who else would have been? Probably Tom Bennett. Retired.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so I was ahead of two other people,
Yeah.
and then so now I'm 116.
All right.
And third from the bottom isn't
Yeah,
really a story
yeah,
like
yeah.
the bottom.
But
was.
it's pretty. We're way
Yeah,
down there.
we're low.
Yeah. So no, it's great. So, and I just like, I'm born and raised here. I'm gonna die here. That's why I want to do it. And I think I bring the hometown values and build Springfield, build the 95th district. I mean, I'm big on that. I don't have any aspirations of running for Congress or running for a statewide office or anything. I really like just being the state rep, and that's that's why I've got my own businesses that I need to maintain and all that stuff. So I think I'm a perfect fit for it. For this area and all that stuff, so we need guys like you though to run for governor. That's what we need.
Oh my gosh!
Come
man.
on, that's what we got to start doing, Travis. We got to start getting, and that's one of the things I think we should be working on right now. After these elections are over, get the Senate, get the House, and get us all in a room. We can have it right here, as a matter of fact. But have everybody say, hey, who wants to? Who's ever thinking about being a congressman? Who's ever thinking about being governor? All right, raise your hand. All right, now if there's 60 of us in the room. It might only be 20 people. All right.
Yeah.
Now, what are we going to do to get these 20 people exposure? Because we need to win the big enchilada, and that's the governor's office. But one of the problems we have statewide is no one knows our candidates.
Yeah.
The last election, I've got my dad calling me like, who am I voting for? And we're going through because nobody really knew our candidates. We've got to get some name recognition for our young candidates, and we got to start promoting them and pushing them out there. So.
Well, welcome to the Good People Podcast. This is what we're doing here, Mike.
All right, I know. Well, it is, but we need to promote you, not me. I'm going to stay right here in Springfield.
I do agree with you, though, and I think it's just part of the death of local news.
Yes,
is that there's not really newspapers anymore. No. Maybe folks will watch the local TV evening news, but not really. I mean, it's a lot of nationwide network, and I think we're in a good position because. I could be wrong. I don't have any inside info, but I don't think that Governor Pritzker is going to run again in 26.
You don't?
I'd be kind of shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, I think either Harris wins, and he's going to want to go to the administration so badly. I mean, he just spent how many $100 million on the DNC. I mean, he wants that badly. Yeah. Even though he goes on the Sunday morning talk shows and says,
"Oh well, they all do."
Well, Kamala Harris did ask me to be VP, and I would hate to leave Illinois, but she does want me to do it. And then he's like out of the top 10. It's like, JB, how we know that you're ready for the next level. Yeah. So that's one. But if thank God that doesn't happen, and it's Trump. Well, I think. In 2026, if I'm him, I would say I'm not running again. I'm going to focus my eyes on the next level. And a lot of people need to still be the governor because they need to remain relevant, and that's an avenue to do that. But for him, he could spend $500 million a year around the country sprinkling money on all sorts of liberal pet projects and really setting himself up well for that primary. Yeah. And I don't think he's a candidate that can win for a whole lot of reasons we won't get into. But I don't see him running again in 26, which is huge for a couple of reasons. Number one, that means that they don't have an incumbent that you got to beat. And number two, he's funding this entire machine. I mean, to the tune of $360+ million over the last 5 years, which, a normal governor's race for Illinois maybe should take 50 or 60 million, and he spent 360 over that time period, which is kind of just really sick if you think about it, that it's that important to him that he idolizes this position so much that he's going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to buy it for himself. But so you take away the incumbent and you take away the funding apparatus, and you think about the fact that in 2022 he only got 54% of the vote. He outspent Darren Bailey 16-1 and only was able to get by with 54% of the vote, because in a statewide race there's no gerrymandered maps.
Right.
Illinois is more of a toss-up state. It's probably +5 to +10D. And so you take away the money, you get a candidate in there that can win. And I think we've got so much potential because even if we remain in the super minority and we can't have a governor that can do veto overrides, we get all the power of the agencies. And our agencies are just so bloated and so inefficient. You get somebody in there like you who just understands business, that understands efficiency and cost cutting, we could really make Illinois a much better state, I think, in pretty short order. We're going to always have high taxes because our debt and our unfunded pension liability are so large, so we're going to need to fund that. But we could cut down agency spending. We could way scale back on our regulations. I mean, we could make a lot of really good improvements with the right governor in a short period of time.
But we got to get them.
Yeah.
So who do you want? Who do you got? You got any names for us?
Well, the person I think could do it is a person I don't want to do it, because I love having Leader McCombie as our leader. Yeah. I think that she really brings the caucus together and all the different factions, and she's such a good worker. But the hard thing is for Republicans, we don't have a deep bench because we don't have any of the statewide offices. Right. So we kind of got, your two obvious ones would be the chamber leaders, so Leader McCombie and Leader Curran. And then you think about the Congress people, so probably Darren LaHood has been the most tenured. So I don't have any inside info, but I would think those three would kind of be the three obvious ones to step into it.
Well, we need to get one of the three of them to do it, because we've got to win that office.
Yeah, and we can.
And I personally think that we should find one office and just solely focus on that and get somebody. And then after we get that, then go to the second office and all that. But until then, singular focus on getting the big office. But.
Yeah. Well, I always kind of try to end on more of a positive note. So Illini football started out this last weekend, got a nice W. You got any optimism about how the season's going to go?
I hope it's going to go very, very well. I've been following the pro football because right here from Springfield, Illinois, Nick Broker, he went to the NFL. He's playing for the Houston Texans, so he made the roster and all that stuff. Cool. And his brother played over there at the U of I. So my alma mater. I hope the problem with Illinois is I'm always nervous. About the time you get your hopes up, then something happens. So hopefully, but it's going to be tough now with these new teams coming in there. USC beating LSU and all that. So. Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's just a weird time for college football. I mean, the fact that you got Oregon and USC and Washington and UCLA in the Big Ten,
I know.
That just makes my head spin. But I love Coach Bielema.
I was over at Deal in Decatur and met him and all that. He gave a great talk and all that, and he seems things are going the right direction. I think he's the right fit for Illinois. I hope he stays there for a long time.
And at this point, it's just fun for your team to be competitive.
Yeah.
And if that means they win between 7 and 9 games a season, and
I want us to be Iowa. I just want us to be like Iowa. Yeah. We know we're going to win 8 to 10 games and all that. So
yeah. Well, Mike, appreciate you sitting down with us.
Thank you.
Big race in the fall. How can folks give you money? How can they find you on the internet? Any events coming up that you want to plug?
I've got my big fundraiser. It'll be the only one I probably have before the election, September 10th. It's at Papa Frank's, 5 to 7. So trying to have a big crowd for that and raise a lot of money, and then we're going to hit the ground running. Well, we're already hitting the ground running, but we're going to put the full court press on, and hopefully when that's done, I'll see you back in the chambers in November.
Awesome. I can't wait to get sworn in with you again.
All right. Thank you. All right. Great to see you, Travis.
I'm Travis Weaver, and you're listening to the Good People Project.